Yo, this guy's... It's an elf! Because I only care about things that I can control and influence. I only care about things that makes me a better person, that inspires me, that propels me to closer to my goals and aspirations. So I get better, I improve, and also I help other people improve in the process. Hello friends, my name is Benoit Kim, a UPenn educated psychotherapist, and my mission is to provide education-based entertainment through digestible anime and psychology. In episode 11, I'll explain how winter represents Frieren's emotional suppression and avoidance coping, her ongoing struggle with survivor skills, and why the Northern Journey is a symbol of Frieren's self-discovery, and much, much more. And also, I am low-key happy taking a break from watching Violet Evergarden this weekend, especially after recording 3.5 hours of a silent voice last weekend, which is doing really well. Absolute masterpiece, but very, very emotionally heavy. And also, a major shout out to my patron family for the generous support. Let's tune in and hope you enjoy. I love the lights. Golden hour. Who is Frieren praying to? Post defeat. Episode 10 was amazing. Wow. Frieren's full potential. So it looks like Frieren was praying and having a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers and the fallen warriors and heroes in the battle. All the heroes, not Himmel the hero, because he is the greatest hero that defeated the Demon King and saved the world, but other more ordinary heroes, other soldiers, warriors who willingly sacrificed their lives for the greater cause. In this case, saving the city and attempting to fight Aura and the demon army. And this is very significant here because even through this prayer scene in the beginning, to us, it might seem pretty ordinary and normal for us to have a moment of silence, for us to pray for the fallen soldiers. Oh wow. I'm not crying, I'm just hair in my eyes. So for us, it seems pretty usual and normal. But what have we learned about Frieren so far? Her ongoing struggle with emotional suppression and avoidance. Of course, in the last 10 episodes to date, she has come an unspeakable amount of progress. And yet here in episode 11, we're starting with the episode seeing Frieren being able to have her capacity emotionally and mentally to hold space, to pray, to be grateful for the fallen soldiers. Because without all these fallen soldiers who attempted to fight Aura before Frieren came, sure, Frieren is the most powerful mage with unspeakable amount of immense mana that tipped the scale to Aura's shocking surprise. All these little sacrifices, all these little sacrificial acts allowed Frieren to ultimately defeat Aura. It's the culmination and accumulation of all the sacrifices before Frieren. And I want to conclude this monologue by saying that self-sacrifice is the ultimate highest form of sacrifice. And if you think about what love is a sacrificial act. When we love other people, when we love our family, our wives, husbands, best friends, how do we know we love them? Is we are willing to sacrifice our convenience. We are willing to sacrifice what we don't always want to do for the sake of other people. And that's love. So without self-sacrificial elements, without this desire and willingness to self-sacrifice to a certain degree based on our circumstances and capacities, we cannot say we love other people. And if other people aren't willing to sacrifice themselves, again, to an appropriate degree, sacrifice their time, sacrifice their money, sacrifice their act of service, whatever it might be. Not always sacrificing their lives, of course. But if other people aren't willing to sacrifice their convenience and their time and their resources to a certain degree, then that love is questionable. Because again, love is the ultimate manifestation of a sacrificial act. And here, that's what Frieren is honoring and paying homage to the fallen soldiers, because they all played a part, even though Frieren is the ultimate axe. Metaphorically, that defeated Aura. And this is such a beautiful scene to start episode 11 to depict Frieren's increased emotional capacity to hold space and recognize the emotions and somberness, the emotionality of the fallen soldiers and heroes before her. Amazing. Sorry for muting the music, of course. Copy Strike Police is relentless with Frieren, but please enjoy through my head bobbing. Wow. Oh. Who are these new characters? Spoilers. Flamey, the legendary mage. Aura, sit down. Oh, sorry. She was already sitting down. Shout out to Evan Call. Beautiful music. Ba-da-da. Wow. So many fallen soldiers. Yeah, he better. Earl almost died, dude. He better. Beautiful.
怒られたから。そりゃそうだろうな。怒られて当然だ。俺だって怒る。
Stark is so beat up. Wow. Don't they have healing magic for Stark?
これが普通のリアクションだ。どういうことですか？こっちの話。
Can we just take a moment and really praise and recognize Frieren's emotional evolution and her exponential growth, her emotional development and personal development here? We're only 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the show or the episode, and Frieren's already cracking a smile. Her ability, her facial expressions being more animated, being able to smile more, being able to enjoy these human emotions that she was so disconnected with and from since episode 1. That's amazing. That she's not just having her own monologue of, oh yeah, Aura is the unnatural one because she's a demon. She's able to crack a smile because she understands her own humor and her own symbolic representations of what she was saying. But again, she's able to display these amazing, warm, heartfelt human emotions of laughter and smile. And that is her beautiful evolution and how far she's come. But of course, this episode is called Winter in the Northern Lands. And knowing this show, I know that it won't be too wholesome, and it's not gonna always be wholesome for too long. And again, I talked about in my introductions, I'm predicting that winter is a symbolic representation of Frieren's emotional suppression, her ongoing struggle with survivor's guilt or survivor's remorse, because so many of her mortal parties, especially Himo the hero, and so many others before her have passed away, while she is carrying the memories and the burden of that weight and that guilt, because she is seemingly immortal. So we'll see how her growth that we're seeing in the beginning of this episode already with the silent prayer, being able to hold space, her emotional capacity and the expansion of that, and also her ongoing struggle. Because healing is not a cure-all. Healing is not the final destination. Healing is not always once and done. It's an ongoing process. It's a lifelong pursuit. So I'm very curious to see the contrast and the dichotomy of Frieren's ongoing struggle, but also her ongoing progress and evolution and development emotionally and mentally. Very strong start to the episode.
シュタルク、よくリュグナーたちを倒した。
Good job.
偉いぞ。
Do you see that she's smiling again? She's praising, she's recognizing as the mentor. Beautiful.
普通ってなんだろう。満身創痍じゃん。
丁重に弔ってやれ。
My lord. Who is that? Is that his son?
わしは今日ほど誰かに感謝したことはない。
That's Earl's son? Aw, meow meow. Where are all my cat lovers at? Comment below. Are you a cat person or a dog person? They're both amazing. But which one are you?
確かにわしはお前にできうる限りの褒美を取らすと言った。お前が望んだのは防護結界について記されたグラナト家に代々伝わる大魔。
Very powerful barrier, as we saw that little plants, and then be able to cover up to the tree of life that we saw in the previous episodes.
この魔導士は
偽物。
Oh, she knows.
そうだ。口伝により継承されたこの町の防護結界魔法とは似ても似つかぬものだ。
百も承知です閣下。
My
これは
lord.
趣味ですので。
そうか。それより堅苦しい言葉遣いはなしにしよう。お前から見ればわしなど赤子のようなものだろう。
魔王討伐の旅立ちの時、痛い目にあったもので。そういえば、ハイター様が言っていましたね。オードでは貴族に対する比例は死罪だとか。ヒンメルとアイゼンが王様にタメ口叩いて処刑されかけたんだよね。懐かしいな、ヒンメルの泣き叫ぶ顔。
Overkill.
そなクソガキ、わしに。
この高そうな椅
It looks like Stark is reacting to the... Oh, that was amazing edits.
裏庭の木、切り終えました。ご苦労。
He's a gardener. Oh, it's hilarious.
方便だ。タメ口程度で牢に放り込むような法はこの町にはない。
Nice. Earl is more sensible and he's very astute, as we've seen last episode. Sir Stark. I would love to hear your thoughts below. Is Stark one of your favorite characters? And how many people of you guys can say that Stark is the favorite character, of course, outside of Frieren, because she is the main character and the protagonist? And I've seen a lot of comments, and I feel the same way. In episodes 10, and since I believe in episode 7, where Stark was introduced, I could be wrong, but I think it's episode 7, where Stark was introduced, we saw this stark contrast and this seemingly cowardly, is that a word? This character that was extremely coward, which is what Frieren said, very afraid, his hands would tremble. He's never fought a monster. He was kicked out by his master, Aizen, the warrior. All these different, proof and evidences before we saw, of course, the revelation of how amazing Stark is by defeating a solar dragon in exactly 30 seconds, which is the 30 seconds that Frieren asked Stark to buy. And that was highlighted by one of the viewers, which is amazing, right? Think about that. Frieren asked Stark to hold and be able to, hold the solar dragon down and be able to distract the dragon for 30 seconds as the role of a tank. 30 seconds. And that's the exact amount of duration Stark took independently by himself to defeat the solar dragon within 2 hits. And remember, Solar Dragon was entirely immune to the magic of Frieren. And as we see in episode 10, Frieren is also extremely powerful, being able to take down Lugner with that one hit in the beginning, right? When she was floating in the sky with that wicked scene. So that really shows how powerful Stark is. And even his master Aizen the Warrior also talked about Aizen only hit Stark, not because he's disappointed, not because he's repulsed by Stark's, I guess, fear and coward nature, but rather the opposites. Is because Aizen the Warrior felt instinctively. Remember the fight, flight, or freeze? The three primary fear responses that humans have? To fight Stark. And that's why he instinctively hit him when they were training together. Because of this dormant, this extremely unrevealed yet powerful power and capacity that Stark had. And so I think in terms of this hero's journey archetype by Joseph Campbell, this being able to go from level 1, so to speak, to level 100, because Frieren is already starting at level 100, as we've seen, because this whole show is beyond Journey's Ends. So we're starting with not the peak, but we're starting with the epitome of Frieren's power. And this whole show is premised around Frieren being the most powerful being, maybe not being, but definitely mage in this entire show. And Stark is not like that. He's starting from level 1. Despite this dormant power, we're seeing his development and evolution as a hero. Maybe one day he will become like Himo the hero, and we get to call Stark maybe some other, honorifics to honor him by, because he will definitely get to, I don't know, Himo hero's level, but we'll definitely see him ascending to a great statue based on his characteristics of he is scared, he is fearful, he trembles, he shakes, he faints, like in this scene, because of a gardener was reporting to the Earl about cutting down their tree. And of course, that's masterful writing. It's amazing. It's very comical. But we see how real and how humanistic and truly how relatable Stark is, because all of us get scared, but we see him doing and scared anyway. And that's the sign of courage. Wow. So end of that rant. Comment below. Is Stark your favorite character? And why? Is it because of what I just said? Or is it because you can relate to him and he's just such a multi-dimensional character? Funny, but also serious, but also so courageous and all the above. Also, will Stark and Frieren start dating down the road? Is there any potential romantic interest between them two? What do you guys think? He's floating. Stark is still so beat up. Oh, Earl is finally collected the full belongings of his son. The sword and also the emerald, right? The necklace. Again, sorry for muting the music. Copyright warriors ain't no joke, but wow. Amazing music. Kent, insert candles, please. And don't worry, once this channel hits 15K, we'll have all the uncensored and also an unedited full-length content on Patreon. So make sure you join Patreon family to access all the exclusive content with full music, full sceneries, and everything in between. 15K. That was amazing. That was an amazing scene. Wow. My lord. To end. And I know these are German words, right? Amazing German origins. Himo the hero, meaning the sky. The ends, literally meaning the ends. Frieren, meaning cold.
知らないんですか？大陸魔法協会が認定する魔法使いの資格ですよ。 資格私も旅立ちの時、生徒で取得しま
What
した。
certification?
ほら、3級魔法使いの認定証。そういえば、なんかやってたっけ。今の資格ってこんなんなんだ。フリーレン様、まさか無資格の神魔法使いだったんですか。闇医者みたいに言わないでよ。だって魔法使いを管理する団体ってしょっちゅう変わるんだ
Yeah, she's outlived all the institutions.
よ。どうせこの正常の証ももう使えないんでしょ。何ですかその骨董品は。
さすがの俺でも大陸魔法協会は知っている。少なくとも半世紀以上前からあるぜ。
Half a century, that's blink of an eye for Frieren.
なんだよね。頻繁に管理の基準を変えられちゃうと。ともかくこのままでは先に進めません。あまり詳しくはないのですが、確か北側諸国でも一級試験が受けられる場所がありましたよね。
Is that for Frieren or Fern?
最大の魔法
First rank?
オイサース
All
トだな
burst.
長い道のりになる。
Quick question for anyone that knows about the German origin of this show, which I agree does add an additional layer of intricate nuance and symbolism to the show. Amazing. What's the reason why the writers of this show decided to use German words? Why not any other European language? Why specifically German words? Is it because this universe of Frieren taking place in a German or like inspired places, or is there because the authors or the writers have some sort of a special place or special meaning with German or special affinity for German? I'm curious. Why specifically German? Is it because their language structure, or is it because more personal relationship between the writers and the show? I would love to know. And also, with that being said though, I do want to zoom in real quick on the quick glimpse of what they were saying of Lady Frieren, are you unlicensed? And she's like, don't make me sound like a back alleyway doctor. Think about her lifespan. She's seemingly immortal. She's already lived thousands of years at this point. Think about how many institutions, how many standards they have to change. So for myself, I'm a psychotherapist and I'm registered. And my next step is to be licensed by the board in California. My next step is to be licensed by the board, BBS, Board of Behavior Sciences. That's the board I'll be licensed through. So, but for me, I don't live 10,000 years old. So once I get my licensure by the board, by the states, I just have to paying my renewal fee once a year to make sure my licensure is active. And of course, to pass it, I have to, oh, excuse me. Wow, I don't know where that come from. But of course, to obtain my licensure, I have to pass a 4-hour exam, extremely rigorous, extremely difficult. I have to study countlessly. And of course, I have to accumulate 5,000 hours of clinical hours, 5,000 clinical hours, plus all these cumbersome and tedious steps to be licensed by the board. But that's why it's very important to work with accredited professionals, not TikTok people, but people who are accredited, who went to great education, who are also certified, licensed, and so on. But going back to Frieren's point, in Frieren's world, institutions change all the time. Not all the time, I guess, because they're around for half a century, which is 50 years. So maybe they change once 50 years, maybe a couple of times, right? And for humans, that's fine, that you can still get certified as a 3rd rank mage, 2nd rank mage, 1st rank mage, and so on. But for Frieren, it's so tedious because she's traveling around the world. She's defeating the Demon King. She's collecting spells. So she would have to traverse back and forth to what? Recertify? Even though the entire institution, when she first became a mage, doesn't even exist. And all the standards, all the protocols have changed. Like for me, of course, some standards change based on regulation. Like right now, with the rise of AI, a very big regulations and regulatory issues we're having is, can these AI chatbots who offer air quote pseudotherapy or talk support air quote, can they call themselves therapy? And the word therapy is actually a legal term. You can only call yourself a therapist. You can only call yourself offering the services therapy if you are an actual psychotherapist. Otherwise, you have to call it mental health support or counseling, because counseling only requires a bachelor's degree, or life coaching. So anyone that says they can offer therapy, or anyone that uses the term therapy, it's a legal term, it's a regulation, is that we all have at least a graduate degree, at least a master's degree. Of course, many of us have doctorate degrees and so on. So it's a regulatory issue. So right now, the big issue and the standards we're changing for our digital therapy and so on is, can these AI chatbots call themselves therapy? And even if it's cheaper? And if so, what does that mean for our other telehealth, other virtual therapy that we offer as actual psychotherapists? So here, that's what Frieren's saying, that standards are changing all the time. It's annoying. She doesn't want to go through the hassle of renewing her certification despite being the most powerful mage ever who helped defeat the Demon King. And based on previous episode, with what she was saying with Flamme, her flashback with Flamme the legendary mage, Frieren's master, remember, Flamme's dying wish for Frieren was, hey, please do not make a name for yourself. Please live an unspeakuous. I'm just making up words at this point, dude. Please live a quiet life. Please do not leave any marks in the world. And that's what she's been doing. She doesn't like the grandiosity of fireworks. She doesn't like people welcoming her, celebrating her being the legendary Frieren, the mage. So she's lived a very quiet life. And that's exactly what Flamme the legendary mage wanted. So this will contradict her, right? Is how can she live such a quiet life? And that's why she's been suppressing and only using a slice of her tremendous mana capacity. Also, I feel like with what was revealed recently in the last episode, I wonder if Frieren could have defeated the Demon King all by herself. I feel like Frieren could have defeated the Demon King all by herself without the help of the hero's party. Although I'm sure Himo the hero is truly OP and one of the greatest heroes that ever lived. But I feel like low-key Frieren could have defeated the demon army all by herself based on how powerful she was, right? But that said, here's the thing, right? How can she balance of keep recertifying her mage certificate, which is what Fern is trying to do, and also live a quiet life? Because every time she recertifies herself, people can be like, holy shit, dude, what are you, like S rank, SSS rank, like first rank mage? Who are you? Oh my gosh, you're Frieren. You're the elf mage that defeated the Demon King. That would defeat the entire purpose of Frieren trying to live a quiet life. Anyway, end of rants.
フリーレン、グラナト家はこの恩を決して忘れん。
Have a safe journey. Damn, the Earl couldn't even bow his head, even though he was grateful. Come on, bro. You gotta at least bow. Basic Asian Japanese courtesy.
そろそろ冬ですね。ここら辺の冬は厳しいから気をつけてね。
Winter can be
舐めて
harsh.
いると死ぬよ。そんなに危ないんですか？知らないの？
Frieren smiling again.
軍との戦いで最も多くの人を殺したのは北側諸国の冬だよ。
Winter was the most prolific killer of the demon army. Makes sense. Natural disasters, Mother Nature.
迷った。
That was so fast. Stark. How many times have Stark fainted in this show so far? Comment below.
迷った。
This reminds me of the fight scene from Solo Leveling, last episode that I watched last weekend. Of the winter fight scene. You guys know what I'm talking about?
ジャンボベリースペシャルってこんなに小さかったっけ？
知りませんよそんなこと。
He's still talking about the shaved ice from that bar.
風だと魔法でどっかに飛んでっちゃう。
So we are starting to see the symbolic representations of winter, the snow, the snowstorm, and we're going to see how that's parallel with Frieren's emotional suppression and her ongoing avoidance tendency. And remember, Frieren has come a tremendous way. We have all witnessed her beautiful journey, or beyond journey, pun intended. At the same time, like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure this episode still foreshadows, and we're going to see the ongoing struggle and the stark contrast between her growth, but also her ongoing emotional suppression and struggle. And there's no other elements and season metaphorically and symbolically that represents the struggle and hardships as winter. But as we know, what comes after the winter? Exactly. Comes hope, comes renewal of life, comes spring, comes life. So winter, yes, represents the hardships, hardships and harshness. I'm just making up words at this point, y'all. Right? So all that is true. And winter also foreshadows that after this dormant seasons and preservation, life renews and life and possibilities and hope endures. And I'm sure that's what this episode will focus on. And we shall see. Did Stark faint because of all his previous wounds and injuries? The X might be pretty heavy. Stark is straight up being delusional right now. Like literally he's hallucinating because of the colds, probably blood loss and injuries. 80 years ago. Oh, the cabin is here. Wow. After 80 years, the cabin is still here. Who's maintaining the cabin throughout 80 years? Who could be alive? Hmm? Yo, this guy's... It's an elf! The second elf! Yo, that's an elf! Like an adult elf. Because he's shirtless? That's why he's a freak? Yo! Elves unite. 300 years. That's the lifespan of dwarves, right? Based on what some of you guys shared? For fire.
シベリア山脈を越えてきたんだが、この吹雪で火種を失ってしまってな、凍える小屋の中、スクワットで命をつないでいたんだ。なるほど。
One Punch Man? 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups? KRAFT the monk. The monk. What class is that? Is that a warrior type?
天国を目指す旅か。信仰心が熱いのはいいことだ。半信半疑だけどね。フリーレン様。
She's still doubting? Oh, Stark is really sick, dude. Stark. He is tripping balls right now because he's so sick. I've had a fever so badly before that I think I was low-key hallucinating. I guess Stark's world is comprised of that shaved ice that shrunk over time, and his master, Aizen the warrior, he's gonna freak out. Oh, I knew it. I'm dead. The delayed response. That's true. That's true. Dude, this monk elf is huge. He must be a warrior type.
おさん、名前は？
文句の
KRAFT the monk. What does KRAFT mean in German? I'm sure
でもな、
whoever with that knowledge, please drop in the comment below.
スタルク、お前はここで休んでいろ。二人は食料を運ぶのを手伝ってくれ。近くに俺の荷車と積み荷がある。本当にお前たちに会えてよかった。この凍った食料もなんとかなるだろう。遠慮せず使ってくれ。
His KRAFT the monk's outfit represents more of a priest than a warrior, but he has an insanity of a body, extremely impressive physique, and you can only have that level of physique when you put in countless years of training, because there's no shortcut with physique and your body and your strength. Right now in this modern era, you can spend money to get plastic surgeries, literally get a new face, the power of makeup, and so on. But one thing that cosmetics cannot still do is your physique, your body weight, and your strength. Those things have no shortcuts. That's why I'm very dedicated to my 5 a.m. morning gym routine for like the last 13, 14 years. Because physical training is one of the few things in this world that have no shortcuts. There is no shortcuts to having a great physique, not just for the sake of being a showmanistic and being a showman about it, but rather it's that endurance, it's that grit, it's that perseverance. Because again, having a great physique and physical training has no shortcuts. Whereas now you can spend money on cosmetics, plastic surgeries, and makeup, and so on. I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that those can be shortcut if you have the money for it. But with physique and body and physical training, there is no shortcut. But here it's interesting that KRAFT the monk's outfit is more of a priest, but then he has that level of impressive physique. And he didn't really answer Stark's question. You must be a renowned monk. He didn't say anything, because if we think, I could be entirely wrong here, but I'm just highlighting the fact that in real worlds, when you hear about the word monk, and even in fantasy novels and epic fantasy worlds, what do we know about monks? There are people who suffer and who train in silence. They don't want any fame. They don't care about money, wealth, materials. They are literally people who are training in silence, suffering in silence for their greater cause, their ultimate purpose, their North Star. I wonder if that's the reason why KRAFT the monk here didn't answer Stark's question and why he's not renowned. Because if he were to be renowned, that would defeat the purpose of being a monk. I could be entirely wrong, so we shall see.
量は十分にありますね。このままシベア山脈を越えるのは自殺行為だし。
Wow, that would be intense. 젠쟁?
お前のことなんてこれっぽっちも知らん。
勇者様ご一行の魔法使いですよ。
その前は
And before that, wow. That quick exchange, Frieren is like, oh, she's of the hero's party that defeated the Demon King and saved the world. Mic drop. That's a massive milestone, a massive hallmark. And KRAFT the monk is like, oh, never heard of it. And before then? And Frieren's like, are you trying to start a fight? Frieren just told you. But that's not what KRAFT the monk was trying to do, with the gentle smile. And he said, because we are elves. What's the implicit messaging of that? What KRAFT the monk is trying to say is, oh, that's cool, but that was what? Only the last 100 years? What about 100 years before that? What about 500 years before that? Because remember, KRAFT the monk just said, I haven't seen any of his own kind, an elf, in 300 years. So that's 3 times the length of the party defeating the Demon King. And he knows that their temporal perception or their time perception and how timeline works for elves is dramatically and entirely different than humans and anyone else. That's why Frieren's descriptions of her being hero's party and Frierin's description of this time hallmark, trying to identify who Frieren is, does not work and is meaningless for KRAFT the monk. Why? because they're both seemingly immortal species of elves. I love how time perception and the difference of this temporal perception between Frieren, the human, and also KRAFT the monk, and also Frieren is showing up once again. It's awesome to see a different elf. Wow. So wholesome. So does this mean that Frieren is like a teenager or an adolescent for species of elves compared to KRAFT the monk? Because he actually looks like an adult, or old man, as Stark calls it, and Frieren visibly or seemingly looks like a young teenager. Oh, I thought that ended on Stark. So we see KRAFT the monk praying a lot. So is he the healer type or warrior type? I'm so confused. 6 months. Wow. Time flies by.
フェルンに渡してやってくれ。あの子は信仰心の熱いいい子だ。
She is.
僧侶に育てられた影響だろうな。女神様への感謝を忘れていない。
I was like, how did KRAFT the monk know? Or did Frieren share that with him?
信じていないんだな。
He does. The goddess?
創造の女神様は神話の時代を除いて、この世界の長い歴史の中で実際に姿を現したことは一度もない。
若いな。俺も昔はそうだった。
Wow, how old is KRAFT the monk?
そこから女神様を信じている。いや、いてくれなきゃ困るんだよ。俺の成してきた偉業も正義も知っている奴は皆死んだ。
Wow.
だから俺は死んだ。素晴らしいものだったってな。じゃいないってのは。
Wow, that's deep. Mortality versus immortality.
人生を歩んでここにいるんだぜ。天国もかフリー。
Interesting. That's a deep question.
まあいい。
That's a very, very deep and extremely existential, very poignant question. Is heaven then also a selfish desire? Let's think about this very quickly, not to turn this into a philosophical and existential conversation. Because Frieren is, I think, of course, these are my thoughts. Frieren is partially right that wishing that there is a goddess, wishing that there is heaven, can be interpreted as a selfish thought. I talked about this in an earlier episode. I'm a Christian, I'm a deacon, I serve at my church and high school ministry as a deacon every Sunday for the last 4 years now. And at the same time, I also said that I frankly, deep inside, I don't really care if God actually exists. There will never be empirical evidence scientifically to prove the existence of God. There's many astrophysicists out there and other scientists that I'm friends with have postulated that you can indeed somehow prove God's existence through physics. But of course, there are many different schools of thought. And for me, it doesn't really matter if God is real or not. I personally categorize everything in this life into 3 categories of truth: practical truth, objective truth, and subjective truth. Practical truth is my faith and my choice of believing in God. It's practical for me. It inspires me to be a better neighbor, better husband, better son, better person. It encourages me to serve, like servant leadership, to volunteer, and Sundays give money back to the homeless or other things. It inspires me to be a better person because I want to be more like Christ-like. I want to be a follower of Christ per my faith. But it doesn't really matter for me if when I die, God actually exists or not. Because I don't think I'm wasting my time. because I don't think that without being a Christian, I'll be as dedicated to serving on Sundays and volunteering work. I'm not saying that you have to be a Christian or religious to be a good person. Plenty of my atheist friends, or even agnostic, who don't believe in anything, are extremely generous, compassionate, and charitable. So it's not mutually exclusive. But for me personally, being a Christian is very practical and very helpful for me, my goals, and my aspirations. So that's the practical truth. What's the objective truth? That Earth is round. If you're a flat Earth theory believers, get out of here, man. Like, I'm not in the business convincing. If you still think the Earth is flat, bro, I don't know what to say. Right? So empirically speaking, Earth is round, or it's a sphere. And so that's an objective truth. Or there's gravity, thermodynamics, like physics. Those are natural laws. That's objective truth. There's empirical evidence. And subjective truth, that's also my faith in God. That is subjective to me. And what's subjective is not always objective. But what's objective is not always practical. Like, for example, if aliens and UFOs were real, right now, during my recording of episode 11 of Frieren, if a UFO comes right now outside my window of the studio room and it beams me and kidnaps me outside, so this episodes never get released, or maybe me being abducted by aliens gets captured live for the first time, that would be cool. Like, I don't really care about aliens or UFOs, no matter how many documents get declassified and leaked online. It doesn't really matter for me, because for me, UFOs is neither my practical truth or subjective truth, and it's also not quite objective truth, because it has not been empirically proven yet. So here's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of things in this world, whether they're true or not, real or not, it doesn't really matter to me, just like God or aliens, because I only care about things that I can control and influence. I only care about things that makes me a better person, that inspires me, that propels me to closer to my goals and aspirations. So I get better, I improve, and also I help other people improve in the process. So unless there are things like that involves me or my friends, my loved ones, or amazing reaction like this, it doesn't really matter to me. And I think that's what KRAFT the monk is saying, that is heaven really a selfish desire? Because in a sense, believing in heaven, you can also argue it's entirely selfless, because you're willing to let go of your ignorance, you're willing to let go of your own ego, skepticism, and evidence and proof, because you wish that there's this heavenly place for the greater cause of everyone. Because if heaven exists, doesn't that benefit so many of us rather than just myself, which is the definition of selfish? What do you guys think about that? And do you guys believe in heaven? Are you guys religious or spiritual? Again, not because we have to, but because I think it helps us in many ways if you choose to believe in it.
お前の身の上を話せ。俺も話す。お前が信じないっていうのなら、女神様の代わりに俺がお前を褒めてやる。
意外ですか?
That mouth opening straight to him of the hero's flashback, huh?
正直ですね。
I'm guessing another similar conversation between Frieren and the bishop.
きっと女神様も清く正しい。
I love the clapbacks.
あなたには褒めてくれる人はいますか?
Wow,
急
deep.
にどうしたのさ。
あなたは女神様を信じていないようなのでば代わりに私が褒めますよ。
That's exactly what KRAFT the monk just said. Wow.
常に魔力を制限しているのに、それは血の滲むような。
The priest knows that Frieren is restricting her mana at all times.
っていたの。
何年一緒に旅をしていると思っているんですか？よ。それ
Yo.
に高額のためにもなります。
なんで？
So I wonder if Himo the hero and other people also
私の子供
noticed?
は
Fern.
僧侶は生涯独身でしょ。
Not literal child. Wow, that flashback. And a smile.
なんで女神様に使う？
Nice catch.
褒めてもらったから。
Cherish them.
いや、その人はもう
It's one. Himo the hero.
今は天国にいるよ。そうだね。
Whoa. That was a crazy scene right there. That interaction, that dialogue. KRAFT the monk said that, wow, you must have really good friends. When Frieren's like, no thanks, I don't need to believe in goddess. Excuse me? Wow. I didn't mean to disrespect goddess with a burp. I'm sorry, goddess. When KRAFT the monk was like, wow, you must have really good friends, cherish them. And Frieren's like, yeah, I don't need to cherish, or I don't need to worship or believe in goddess because someone has already praised me. I thought she was talking about the bishop and other friends like Aizen the warrior and so on. And instead, Frieren is only talking about Himo the hero, who praised her for the spell collecting hobby, right? A long time ago in the flower fields, which is why collecting spells became Frieren's sole and only hobby. So, what does that mean? Does that mean Frieren never considered anyone else her friends? Like Aizen the warrior, the bishop, and so on? And she only considered Himo the hero her friends. And is that why all of her memory callback and flashbacks are exclusively centered around Himo the hero? Even just now, seemingly her dialogue with KRAFT the monk brought back her memory about her conversation with the late bishop. But it turns out ultimately it was still about Himo the hero, because she said that, no, I can't cherish him because he's already in heaven. So it was still ultimately about Himo the hero. So what does that mean? That only Himo the hero was truly a friend considered by Frieren? Or is that not what she meant? Because that's what that's coming off of. And another thing I want to highlight here is the contrast between Frieren's lack of facial expressions until she cracked that smile, thinking about her friends and Himo the hero, and how animated and more emotionally available and facially expressive KRAFT the monk is, because they're both elves. And now I think through this episode we can completely put the debate to rest, where Frieren's inability to express her emotions in the beginning of the show, her emotional constriction, her flat facial expressions, her struggle with emotional developments is not because of her species as an elf. Because KRAFT the monk here is extremely emotionally available, very gentle, very warm, very expressive, very emotionally open, unlike Frieren. So we're comparing both elves here and noticing how much more animated and lively KRAFT the monk is, and how much more aloof, somber, facially flat, restrictive Frieren is, despite her tremendous emotional progress. And I think this verifies my hypothesis since the beginning of this show, that Frieren is indeed severely depressed, because she doesn't have all these emotional characteristics that KRAFT the monk has, because they're both elves, yet their facial expressions and emotional outlets and emotional expressiveness are so dramatically different since this beginning, or as soon as we introduce KRAFT the monk. Very, very interesting.
俺はこっちだ。フリーレン。根性の別れとは思わん。何百年後かに
Couple hundred years. That's nuts. That time perception is crazy.
楽しかったぜ。
ペンダントありがとうございました。
Wow. And I wanted to pause right here in this outro or this ending scene because again, that's Frieren's eyes seeing through the world through this winter lens. And remember what we talked about. That memory recall that Frieren just had about Himo the hero playing the field with the kids and noticing and finally recognizing that Himo the hero did praise her. And because of Himo the hero and his praising and Frieren's amazing time spent with the bishop, the hero's conquest, that she doesn't feel like she needs to have a goddess in her life because someone else already praised her instead of goddess, which is, I guess, the perspective that KRAFT the monk and also the late bishop shared. But think about the emotional heaviness of that and how aloof and how flat her expression was when she was sharing what she shared with KRAFT the monk. Sure, she cracked a smile, but do you notice the discrepancies and the massive gap between the emotional heaviness of her memory flashback and what she was saying? She was so nonchalant, so seemingly unaffected despite the heaviness of the memory. That is her avoidance coping to conclude my episode and my reaction. That is her ongoing struggle with the survivor's guilt and survivor's remorse that I talked about in the beginning of this video. That is her ongoing struggle with unprocessed and unaddressed emotional heaviness of her memories. Because remember, Frieren as this immortal being is responsible for carrying the tremendous burden and the weight of the memories of all those loved ones who came before her, especially Himo the hero. And she has no one else to share her memories with. She has no one else to process, to debrief, to console her heaviness of her memories. Because everyone that she knows, except Aizen the warrior at this point, are dead. And we know that Aizen the warrior is resting far away because of their journey of going back to the end, to trying to find this heaven place, right? So think about the loneliness, despite Frieren carrying on and bringing on the apprentice of Fern and meeting another young warrior with great potential, Stark, who is bringing endless joy and endless laughters to the viewers. But you see that Frieren is not as impacted and rejoiced by Fern and Stark's presence and their amazing social connection as she once were with Himo the hero. Because that's her regrets, that is her longing. But Himo the hero is no more. Amazing. That's of course the blue flower that Himo the hero favorite flower, right? So this is another symbolism of Himo the hero, Frieren's longing of him. And notice how it's a spring after the winter in the beginning of the outro, symbolizes life, growth, transformation, renewal, hope. Such a sick artwork, dude. It's amazing. See? After the famine comes the feast. After the droughts comes celebrations of life, harvest seasons, which means transformation, spring again, birds, liveliness. Do you see how different, how lively, animated, and full of life the outro is compared to the intro? That is Frieren's transformation and her ongoing emotional developments. Beautiful. Amazing, amazing episode as always. Wow. Oh, whoa. Spoilers. What is this? To piss. What? Wait, what?
本物の勇者だよ。
What was that teaser right there for episode 12? Those are gossips, a true hero? Is it about the contrast between Himo, the hero, which was air quote the true hero, and people's perceptions, idealizations, imposter syndromes, and gossips of that? I'm about to record episode 12 after taking a quick break anyway, so super excited. Anyway, If you found my analysis and reaction helpful, smash that thumbs up and subscribe because you don't want to miss the next episode. And also, please share this episode with one friend. Don't you want to share some love for this deep psychological analysis with your friends? Frieren friends unite. And also, we would love for you to join our Patreon family at Psychotherapist Reacts. Your support means the world to us, and shout out to the 120 members who have joined already to support the channel and the great work we're doing, because it does take a lot of work and the research and everything in between. And all the exclusive content will go live and become available once this channel hits 15,000. We're already almost at 11,000, so hopefully within a couple of weeks. And as always, till next time, peace.